So we took DSS, Department of Social Service families, and what we saw was, I use the phrase, it was like putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. Some were actively drinking, actively drugging. For some, it was their first or second child, but no idea how to parent. And even in their behaviors, they couldn't feed the baby first and them second because they were hungry at every level. So what I saw in that shelter was a revolving door. And they would get mixed up with bad boyfriends and drink or do drugs. And then that was really hard to work with. But what we gave was unconditional respect, unconditional love. We ate with them. We participated in the housekeeping. We participated in the babysitting. And for some, it was learning how to care for your baby, when to change the diaper, how to talk to the baby, how to get the baby to know your name. It was that basic. So I knew then that social work was not enough, that we needed education as a part of the services that were going to be imparted. And 3 of the 4 sisters had been teachers. So we were able to read stories, help somebody print their name. We were always reading for people their letters from DSS. So finally, the agency we partnered with, we asked for a house manager, and we had a Spanish-speaking house manager, and that was great because she could navigate the DSS system. So I was there for 5 years, and while I was there, I was hired by another agency to be an education advocate. And I was the first education advocate on Long Island hired in the not-for-profit sector. So the other agency I worked for was scattered site housing between Bellport and Amityville. So that was a lot of driving, but I accompanied families into schools, helped them navigate where the child should be placed, if the child needed testing, et cetera, et cetera. Simultaneous, I set up a tutoring program for that agency. They got the money for a van. I approached the Knights of Columbus. I approached the Y. They gave us space to tutor and set up a tutoring program. It was hard to keep good tutors. Tutors didn't always want to be in the places where we were, because most shelters were not in nice neighborhoods. And then the tutors had concerns about their safety. So after 5 years of that, I knew what I said to Shannon was that putting a bandage on a hemorrhage. It wasn't enough for one person to do this work, even though the other sisters were amazing, very supportive. We were 3 different religious orders. So I felt that we needed to do something different, and I wrote the program. We need social work and we need education. And I went to Stony Brook and I begged them to help me to set up the not-for-profit. They said, we don't do not-for-profits, we do for-profits. I said, somebody gave me your name, you have to help me. And they did. And I learned how to set up the not-for-profit. And my community was supportive. They paid the attorney fees. They put in the first telephone we had. They carried my health insurance for a year. Come the second year, we were flying high.
Awesome, Máiréad. So interesting that in your work in the shelter, you were doing these different things. So you had the social work happening in the shelter, but then you had the education advocacy happening in this realm, and you had a tutoring program over in this space. And so with Newground, you brought all of that under one organization to assist the homeless families and veterans. In addition to talking about your inspiration for Newground, is there anything that you would add about your vision for the organization? As you were writing the program, as you say, what was your vision for the organization?
My vision was that when people have worked with us and received the services, teenagers, children in junior high, children in elementary school, that everybody would be in school consistently, and that those children would graduate high school. They'd get out of junior high, they'd get out of high school with the goal of college. Now, not everybody could afford that in the beginning, because even if it was a Suffolk Community or a Nassau Community College, there's still fees. But for the moms to get their GEDs, for the all students to get out of high school was significant, because they would be street kids if we weren't intervening in their life and helping them with homework. So my vision was that this cycle of homelessness would end for them. Some of the moms told me they were born in the back seat of a car. Their mother was born in the back seat of a car, and their grandmother was born in a truck somewhere. What they knew was homelessness for many generations. So my vision was, we're going to end the cycle of homelessness through educational advocacy and good social work. So we hired clinicians, like a clinical social work, to supervise the work. Sometimes they talked to all of us, but mostly it was the social worker that had one-on-one. Sometimes in the beginning they'd run group sessions. It was very helpful. So I learned from my mother and father that when you want something, when you want to change something, sometimes you have to get the professional services you need to grow. And the social workers need that, because hearing the stories of suffering of families is heartbreaking. And when you hear it day in and day out, client after client, it's very wearing. So we've always built in, and I know Shannon has it now, good supervision. And not, your boss isn't your clinical supervisor. That's part of it, is that you go to somebody who's licensed and trained, and that's a healthy thing, that you're outside the office, because sometimes you can learn how to navigate office relationships.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true. And it's interesting, Máiréad, in saying that, you know, so much of what you want for the families and imagined for them, as far as exposing them to professionals in the field of social work and education and tutoring and education advocacy. I know that in our conversations, you've talked about how you sought professional advice and experts and guidance when you were trying to bring your vision of Newgrounds to life 30 years ago. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, those early conversations or things that you did to really make sure that the organization could be the best that you wanted it to be?
Well, in the beginning, I would gather the social workers, and we'd have somebody working with us on our own relationships and learning our different roles, because I was trying to empower the workers to be strong and defined. That involved workshops, and it involved me getting training. I went and trained to be a family therapist. I went and trained to be an executive director. I went to an executive roundtable. I went and learned management at Columbia University. So I took trainings to help myself grow the organization. And we had volunteer accountants. I know when you came on board, Shannon, and you were being trained, we had volunteer accountants who helped us to understand the nuances of bookkeeping that were our part of the bookkeeping happened, because we had to learn how to record things and how to keep receipts, etc. An exciting thing in that time was we started a revolving loan fund for the families and veterans. And the Ursulines had given us a gift of money, that a sister had life insurance and she had died very young. And the Ursulines said we could put this out for bid. So nobody bid for it. So I was encouraging two sisters, because they were trying to start something. I said, you go for it. I won't go, because I'll be competitive, because we were getting other grants. And then the deadline came and they said, we're not doing it, Máiréad, go for it. So the Ursulines gave us the $40,000. So then I talked to the board, and so they were happy. And we set aside like $5,000 for revolving loan. Shannon and I were talking about this yesterday. Families who had a death in Carolina or a death in Alabama, they wouldn't go if their children weren't dressed up. This is African American life. It's not like the rest of us who go in our beachwear and swimwear to church on weekends. Not saying we all do that, but that is what happens. People don't always get dressed up appropriate for church. Not in the African American community or the Caribbean community. Their children are dressed in suits. They're very well taken care of. And Mac, our bookkeeper, managed the revolving loan very, very well. And Shannon told me it's still going strong.
Yeah, and I think that that's a testament to the way the program was created. So many things that were started 30 years ago are still a natural part of our program. We have our revolving loan program. This is basically an opportunity for clients that we're working with to borrow money for something if their car breaks down and they don't have that safety net, that savings to dip into to repair the car or to get new tires, or they have a heating bill that they can't afford. They can come to us and borrow the funds. It's interest free, and then they're able to repay the loan on a very affordable basis. So we have families and veterans that might be paying the loan in $5 increments. They may pay $5, and then when they get their tax refund, they pay the balance off. But it is a safety net, like so much of what New Ground does, in providing them that support when no one else would. Their credit is so bad, they would never succeed in receiving money through a loan. And something like a broken down car means that suddenly they can't get to work, and now their entire livelihood is on the line because they need $300 or $150 to repair a car, and there's nowhere to get those funds. So it is an absolute support for all of those that we work with, and really a lifeline. So it's always interesting to hear sort of the origins of something and to see how it has transformed over the years. And in general, that's a lot of what it's been for us these 30 years. Máiréad, I'm wondering, what does it mean to you for New Ground to be here 30 years later? Tomorrow marks 30-year anniversary. What does that mean? What thoughts come to your mind when you think about that?
I can hardly believe it, of how fortunate I was to have the support and the ability to write the vision down and to actualize it. And then I had the openness to create 2 boards initially. We have a regular board of directors who are super for fundraising and dedicated for governance issues and making sure that everything is the way the state wants it to be. We've always had good accounting, good attorneys, and board members, when they're being introduced to us, come in and say, show me your personnel files, show me your tax files, show me this, and we can open the drawer and pull it out, and it's all there. And unfortunately, not every agency does that, but we did. I always had people on the board that knew more than I do about business and accounting and bookkeeping and everything. And then, like I said, the social workers go to clinical supervision. The executives or the directors, like Diane, get training in our field of what we need to bring to the table. So I think that learning that's ongoing with every person in the organization is key, and the veterans and the families only benefit. Awesome for me is every high schooler, I think we have a 97%, every high schooler gets out of high school and into a 3rd level institution. Many go to community colleges, some go to 4-year colleges, some get scholarships. We've had people go to med school, like they really excel. The ongoing professional development of the staff and of the board we've had board retreats that have been awesome because we're always trying to think of ways to raise money. But we have 3 boards. We have an advisory board that feeds onto the main board, and we have a young adult board, a young professional board, and the leader of that board is on our main board and Diana's co-leader on that board. So while we're a small staff, like Evel does amazing work, all the educational work. Selena is the supervisor of the social work interns. So what's awesome is that the team is intact and the learning is constant, and the straight talk.
And I was going to say, it models very much, Máiréad, what you put in place 30 years ago. As you said, when you brought the team together and you wanted that supervision and guidance, it's really, you set the tone for what we try to do. I'm wondering if you wanted to share a story or two about those early years, when you first opened the doors, when you were, I know we've had conversations about this over the years and hearing about, everybody in one room. Tell us a little bit about what those early years were like.
Well, we were in one room, and Carmela was my assistant, a former teacher, and we had one social worker part-time. And we had a little corner with reading books for children. And a volunteer came to us with her 2 little girls. They were like 3 and 5. And she had them dressed like Little Red Riding Hood. It was the winter. She had a basket of cookies and juice. And we had these 3 or 4 little children who were African American in a corner on a carpet getting their first books from the basket that this lady brought in. And Carmela used to practice the reading with the children so that they could bring their books home. They could bring their juice and cookies home. And they came twice a week, and it was awesome. So that was the beginning. That little group grew, and then we began to have some barbecues. Some of the board members said, I want the children to have what I have, and they'd set up their grills out in Eisenhower Park, and we'd get the families bussed in or get enough volunteers to drive or hire cars, and they had fun playing together, and that was awesome. And the board members, some of those board members are still with us from 30 years ago, like Terry Baydella, Hugh Finnegan, Steve Ryerson, some of the, and Hank. Some of those early board members are still with us, and that's awesome for 30 years to give that much. Under Shannon,
and I think, Máiréad, it's a testament. I think it's a testament to you as well that you brought some very key people in, and they connected with this vision and mission that you had for New Ground and embraced it and continue to this day to support the work and the mission. It's really impressive.
Yeah. So now under Shannon's leadership, which is about 20 years now, 18, 20 years.
I'm here 18 years, and Máiréad, you and I are tied closely. I think I'm about 14 and a half years executive director, so that means you're 15 and a half. We're almost tied, okay. which is fun.
Yeah. So I don't know where I was going with that now. I lost it for a minute, but I think the key is having the board be very active and participating in planning the events for fundraising and giving us ideas. Because I'm a teacher, Shannon's a social worker, well, Diane's the professional developer, but like we need the board to help us do the legwork of the events that we do. We generally, when we're not in COVID times, have a golf outing. That's a pretty hefty profit we get from that. Also, we have a large gala. They're our main fundraising boards. And then we have multiple other small events, but they bring in significant money. All of our money, 90% of our money is raised by the 3 boards. That's shifting a little bit now, I think. Is that correct, Shannon?
It's definitely probably about 95% of our budget is fundraised.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the rest we have we have a small New York, small government grant with New York State, and then a couple of small contracts still with Nassau BOCES. That's a partnership that Máiréad started 27 years ago, and you know that morphed into a more recent partnership with a couple of school districts directly, but that's been ongoing work under the Education Advocacy Program that Máiréad started 30 years ago. Máiréad, one thing, I guess my last question before I'm going to open it up to others on the call that might have some burning questions for you is 30 years, 3 decades, it's a long time. What was homelessness like 30 years ago? How has it changed? What do you see as being different or similar for the homeless or the homeless situation here on Long Island over the past 30 years?
Up until COVID times, homelessness had been less visible on the streets. 30 years ago, it was visible. You could turn a corner, you could end up on any street and see bags and boxes at the curb put out by the landlord ruthlessly. And in that box would be birth certificates, immunization cards, important documents that those parents needed. But when the landlord wasn't getting the money, they just bag everything up and put it to the side. And that was very, very visible. And lots of low class hotels. The families would be put into rat-infested, roach-infested motels. No ability to heat your baby's bottle, no ability to cook food. You might have a microwave. You might have 6 kids. They might give you 2 rooms and the county would pay for it. It was a murderous situation. And then good people like us who are on the screen today, we're bringing our frozen turkeys the day before Thanksgiving and expecting somebody to be able to cook it. And they don't have anything to cook the turkey in, or meat that's not cooked. So we learned to talk to our donors about, it's great that you're buying the turkey. Could you cook it at home and carve it up? Because they're sitting on beds. There's no tables in a motel room. So that was a big part of the reality. There were many of those motels that would house the homeless, and the homeless were very visible in New York City. Everywhere they were visible, even in suburbia.
That's an interesting difference, Máiréad. I think that's an interesting difference to point out that, you know, these days, a lot of times when I am speaking about homelessness publicly on Long Island and speaking to others about it, they'll say, like, is homelessness really an issue on Long Island? Because they don't see it here. They don't have, you know, what you see in an urban area like New York City or other cities where the homeless are out, you know, on the street corner or on a subway grate or in a public park. Here. It's very hidden. And I think the other point that you highlighted is that it's families, that you were seeing families outside on the street with their belongings. And that's something to this day that's the same, that we do have a tremendous number of families. We have more families homeless on Long Island than we do individuals. We have a very high rate of children that are homeless on Long Island. And to this day, even though I believe that we probably have, and this is, I guess, Máiréad, I'm wondering what your thought is. I'd say that we might have more shelters now on Long Island than we did 30 years ago, that there are more shelter beds available, but there is still a use of our local motels by Department of Social Services, because the shelters are often full, and then families are placed in local motels, and that's where they're being temporarily housed.
And now since COVID, it's more visible in New York City and Queens and the Bronx. People back sitting on the street, sleeping up against the wall, hiding in the vestibule of a church or a storefront that has kind of a roof that comes out for some shelter. So that part of life is back, and that's alarming, and that's from COVID. Like people just...
And I think Yeah, and I think where it is here on Long Island is that you see more such individuals in our transportation hubs, like along our railroad stations or bus stations.
Yeah.
And we've also heard that there are growing numbers of people living in the woods again on Long Island. And Nassau County doesn't have a tremendous amount of that space. But there is some, and so there are people that are living in some of those spaces, and definitely in Suffolk, and those numbers are growing. So I think overall we know that the need is great. The need is here. It hasn't changed, unfortunately, in 30 years. What you started 30 years ago, Máiréad, was a dream, and it's become this reality. And I think for all of the families and veterans that have been through our doors, you've helped make their dreams come true. And it's inspiring to know, and to know that you brought this vision to life. You created this organization, and so much of what happened and what started 30 years ago is still going on, sometimes in the same exact function, sometimes a little bit different. You talked about the reading circle with Carmela and the tutor coming in with the basket of books, and spending time with children, learning how to read and learning to love reading. And now we have a reading program. Right. It's 2 nights a week. That's been running since 2004. We're bringing students in 2 nights a week pre-COVID, and helping them enhance their silent reading skills and become lovers of reading, which is what you did with the reading circles all those years ago. So I know that I'm aware of the time. I know it's 12:37 or so, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions as well. Hopefully I might have asked some of the questions that are in others' minds, but if anyone has a question, we're going to open it up for your questions now. If you'd like to maybe raise your hand. I see Ellen Volpe is the first hand I see, so I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, Ellen.
I hope that you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm curious, given the present conditions, what plans or preparations you have made for the lifting of the rent moratorium, and what we can expect. I mean, it seems like there's going to be more of a need as we can't actually see it unfolding, but it is here, and it is probably, in my own opinion, going to be worse. There are going to be more and more people that need to be served. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that coming onslaught, for lack of a better word. I just know so many people that are having problems paying their rent, and I don't think it's necessarily just going to be the usual poor people, but people like all of us that are on the call, that it could happen to us. So I'm just wondering about that.
It's a great question, Ellen. I thank you very much for asking and for joining us today. It's definitely something that is already on our radar. Evel Sweeney, who's our Associate Program Director, has already accompanied a couple of families that we're working with to court. The good news is that the date continues to be extended a little bit, so we have some more time. There is also funding coming through through the CARES Act. There's funding that's coming down that's going to be helping with individuals who have a rent balance that's due and can demonstrate the ability to afford rent going forward. They just need this lump sum of money to pay the back rent. So we're fielding a lot of phone calls and trying to connect individuals with the right resources and information to help them. But we know that the situations are going to really run the gamut. To your point, Ellen, there are going to be individuals who, prior to COVID, never had an issue with rent, maybe had 1 or 2 cars and 2 parents working in the household, and bills being paid on time, and maybe they had a safety net of savings. And, through the circumstances over the last 10 months, being laid off, burning through their savings, trying to keep ahead of bills, they're facing a circumstance that they've never faced before. And I think that those are individuals that we're also starting to hear from. They're individuals that don't really understand the system necessarily. Some families, to Máiréad's point of breaking the cycle of homelessness, some of our families that we've worked with through the years are families that understand Department of Social Services. They've always been in this cycle of out of homelessness, back into a shelter, back into housing, back into a shelter. So they're a little bit ahead of the game because they have the contacts. They know we exist. They know what Department of Social Services is all about. So the kind of help we're providing them is a little bit different than from people who we're hearing from for the first time that never imagined. I think that's, a phrase we hear a lot. I never imagined myself to be in this position. So I think that the good news is, like I said, there's funding that's available to help kind of bridge that gap, pay back rent arrears. There's a lot more information coming out that we're trying to stay on top of so that we can help the families and veterans that will be struggling with this. Evel is great at keeping on top of those resources and connections. So we're going to be busy, certainly, in the next 6 to 12 months. That's our expectation.
I have a part B to that. It's just sort of a quick question. I know that before COVID, you were accepting donations of all sorts of things, and I'm just wondering, where do you stand now during COVID?
Good question as well. We've cut back on our accepting of donations of everything because of the fact that we're doing most of our work remotely currently, so that we don't have families and veterans coming in here, so we can't move through the donations as quickly as we used to. But we are regularly sort of putting out the word when we need something specific. If we have a family that needs clothing of specific sizes, or we, believe it or not, even though, COVID's happening and we have so many families and veterans that are suffering, we also had 3 families over the last 6-7 months graduate into permanent housing, move into their own apartments. So they achieved a dream that under impossible circumstances and even more impossible circumstances. So we've put the call out for them as far as furniture needs or household needs, so we could still help them outfit their new homes. So we're being specific. In essence, the door is open, but we're being specific about what we ask for and accept, given our limited space and the ability to move things through. Any other questions for Máiréad? Yes.
One donor is selling one of her homes. Some of our donors have very high wealth, and one donor is selling one of her homes, and she called me between now and Christmas, and I talked to Shannon. She said, Máiréad, my daughter told me to sell the furniture, just don't try to sell it, but then, meaning don't try to move it or put it out to the curb. And her home is in Manhasset, so the furniture is magnificent. And she said, and her daughter, who used to volunteer here when she was training for a suicide hotline, she said, Mom, give the money to Newground because they're going to need to furnish places for people to move in. And now a second person I've been talking to, I was telling her the story, and she's trying to sell a very large old dining room set. And she said, I think I'm going to give the money to Newground. So, and that's actually better for the family or for the worker working with the family to furnish a house, because the furniture that might be donated would be way too big for the house or the apartment. But getting the money, it's great. Even no matter how big or small it is, it's a help. But one of the things
that's a great unique way.
Yeah,
it's a great unique way, Máiréad.
It is, yeah. Well, but one of the things that Ed, our outgoing board president, but he's been a great leader for so many years, he said he never envisioned that we would have so many families own their own homes upon leaving us. And they do. If they're not moving into their own home, they're in the process of navigating an eventual purchase or renting in a good school district. That's a biggie for us, renting in a decent school district, because we have deadly districts, as many states have deadly districts, like
Yeah.
poverty in the district and mishandling of funds by leadership. And we don't get involved in that, because that's not our mission. Isn't to clean up the county. Our mission is to work with the family so they can afford an apartment or a house in a decent school district. That's part of the mission of growing. Yeah. And we have almost every teenager goes to third level. Most moms either become a nurse or a paralegal or upgrade in their jobs. Many have gotten master's degrees. I mean, we have been blessed with how the families embrace the services, and then through the hard work of the staff, they think they died and went to heaven. That's a little bit Irish, you know, but
yeah.
It's awesome.
So, Máiréad, I think we've got a question from Gary Gendris. Gary, I saw your hand up.
Oh, I'd be nervous about Gary's question.
I just had a question for you, Máiréad. In terms of the early days when you first set up New Ground, was there ever a point where you kind of said this isn't going to work, or this is just too hard, or it's not going to pan out? And what was your inspiration to make it keep going? I mean, you had to run into a lot of roadblocks, and you had to have a lot of courage to make it happen. So was there ever a point where you just said, forget it, this isn't worth it?
No. When I was 14, Gary, my mom's uncle started taking me to a soup kitchen in our town. Now, I didn't think we were poor, and we weren't poor. I didn't know there was a soup kitchen in our town. I went to a very bad neighborhood that I wasn't supposed to be in, and I began to bring young children to Mass every Sunday. I was 14 when this yen in me happened to help people. I don't often talk like this, so this is what your question is bringing up. So then when I was 16 and 17 and being introduced to the Ursulines through my grandmother's friend, and I had read the life of Angela Merici, I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to empower women and married people to get their best life. And I came to this country, and like I said, I taught in West Hartford, I taught in Chopin Point in Stamford, I taught in Dobbs Ferry, I taught in a few other places. I taught in, and I thought, this is not why, in my heart, I thought, this is not why I came to this country. I wanted to be with the oppressed, economically poor. So my transition point for hope and what keeps my spirit is, I went to a unique graduate school at Máiréad School of Theology, and my mentor was a man younger than me who was a Holocaust philosopher and theologian, and he changed my life, my consciousness of God, my consciousness of Auschwitz and the Holocaust. And he went to live in and he's Jewish, he went to live in the Catholic Worker with Dorothy Day in the city, which is still there down in the Bowery area. So the learning from him, with my master's degree in a School of Divinity, I took a concentration in peace and justice and social analysis. And for social analysis, I went to Bogota, Colombia. Changed my life again. So I was immersed in, like Pope Francis now, he's South American, so he's schooled in social analysis. So I was immersed in how you do social change, how you look at political, economic, social, and religious structures, and how do you navigate that for the most of the people to have access to their better life. I didn't mean to make a big speech, but that was my whole consciousness changed in my early 30s. My understanding of God, my understanding of salvation of Jesus, and I never gave up.
Well, glad you did, Máiréad. We're very glad you didn't. Thank you so much.
You know, I'm very careful, Gary, what I say at board meetings. Because it's not a religious organization. It's a not-for-profit 501c3.
Right.
But my passion is change for people. It has to be economic, and then we find all the other stuff flows out of that. Their life gets meaning. They begin to have their own culture back. Every family lives their life differently, and we don't impose religion. We help people live their best life. Would that be accurate, Shannon?
Yes, Máiréad, I think that's very, very true. I think, and I'm conscious of time again. We're almost at the end of the hour, so we're going to be wrapping up. But I think this is a nice note to wrap up on, Máiréad, which is that you've created an organization that gives hope to individuals and families who have been beaten down and become hopeless after so many years of struggle. Some generationally, they've given up. And you created this oasis where our families and veterans come seeking hope and change. And we're here, just like you were here 30 years ago, saying, we believe in you. We know you can do this. We'll give you the tools. We'll help you get the education. We'll help you develop the skills, and you're going to succeed. This is your dream. You want to achieve A, B, and C. We're going to help you make that happen. And we believe in you. And for many of our families and veterans, high school students, children, and youth, no one has ever said that to them before.
Right.
So it's life-changing. And I, for one, am extremely grateful to you for creating New Ground 30 years ago. I would say to everybody, tomorrow, January 15th, at some point during the day, maybe just, tip your hat or nod to Máiréad for doing this great work and helping hundreds of children and youth and parents and veterans create much more positive, independent lives. Thank you all for joining us. We are launching our 30th anniversary year this week, but we're going to be doing a couple more of these sessions. We're going to be talking with some others about where New Ground is now, and then later on in the year where we are headed, because we know, as Ellen's question highlighted, the need is great and growing drastically, particularly in this year. So our furthest away attendees today, the Ursuline Sisters in Belgium. I see a hand raised. I'll pause and see what you have to tell us.
The website for New Ground is absolutely marvelous. Thank you, Máiréad, and it's fun.
No, Diane and Shannon.
And I'm so impressed with the amount of people who are connected with you, and that shows their confidence in you. And it's wonderful. And I saw Habitat for Humanity. It seems to me I remember how you explained that to us once at a community meeting on Long Island. And I have a great respect for that. It has led me to be more involved in building houses. So it's a chain effect. Yes.
And we're involved with Habitat.
Wonderful. Yes, I saw the name today.
Yeah.
So I want to congratulate you. And at some point, you'll explain what New Ground is to people. But meanwhile, they can Google it and find out why you are calling.
They can Google it, right.
You're a wonderful program, New Ground.
So
I'll see you someday when we're free to come out of Belgium.
That would be, I know, I'm not free to come out of the United States. I'm very thankful to you and Bimla and Nirmala and Bernadette.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm very excited that you attended. Thank you so much. And Ellen, I haven't seen you in ages. But Diane Serenita,
thank you, everyone,
for the website. She's our PR.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know some people might have to sign off because it's just about 12:55, and so we're really, really grateful. If anybody has last-minute questions or comments and you want to stick around, Máiréad and I'll definitely stay on here for a little bit, even just to say hello. I think I might have seen someone also earlier. They look like, Máiréad, they were calling in from Ireland. I don't know if I still see them on here, but any other thoughts or comments or questions anyone has.
I think
Oh,
Shannon's
Lois,
a
yeah.
great leader. I want to say that out loud. And Diane is amazing.
Thank you.
And Evel and Selena, everybody here is amazing. That's all.
Thank you, Máiréad. I think I saw Lois had her hand up. Lois Custer, you just have to unmute. There you
I
go.
did, yeah. I love being in the first row with all of you, so thank you. Great company. But Máiréad, I have to tell you, I am in awe of your whole story because it really is a lifetime of being a revolutionary, and here you are. So thanks.
And, you know, Dr. King was with Rosa Parks. She's one of my heroes. Rosa Parks said, I'm not sitting in the back of the bus.
But thanks to all of you, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, I'm very inspired. I think you need a biography written.
Will you help me? I'll be calling you.
Okay. All right.
Congratulations.
Great.
That's all I wanted to
Thank you, Lois.
Sure.
Gary, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Gary is our accountant. It works very hard for us. Thank you, Gary, for spending the time with us.
Absolutely. And happy anniversary. Happy,
Oh,
wonderful
thank
30
you.
years. 30 years. It's amazing.
Yes. Congratulations. Happy anniversary, everyone.
Yeah.
Máiréad, congratulations.
Thank you.
And 30 more years to come, right?
30 more years to come.
At least.
Congratulations, Máiréad.
Congratulations.
Ed, how are you?
It's been
Ed is
wonderful.
our board president.
It's been wonderful to be a partner of yours.
Yes. Yes, almost from the beginning. Yeah.
Close, actually.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
A
Thank
great
you,
leader,
Ellen.
Ed.
Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you.
I
Ed's the
remember
last
visiting
build
you
our
in the
whole
basement.
business.
I remember visiting you in the basement of the church and saying, Máiréad, what are you going to do when you grow up? New ground is too small. We need to grow.
That's right. That's right. And then you helped us.
Well,
build it.
as you both
Anyway,
are talking about
congratulations.
the history of Newground and it being 30 years, I'm curious to know, did those 30 years go by very quickly?
Yes, very quickly.
I imagine so. I mean, I figured the answer to that question already, but it's unbelievable how quickly time flies.
And I was saying to Shannon, we have some original board members still on our board. Steve Ryerson, Hugh Finnegan on the advisory board, Terry Baydella. They were the beginning people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now Tom
That's
Lambert
true.
is part of that, legacy. So we're very blessed.
Yeah.
And Tom brought Gary in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Gary brought
Quite a-
Lois in. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Very awesome. And Mr. Glick, Gary, how did you come to know us?
A little personal there, Diane.
Okay,
My son introduced me to her a while back.
awesome,
Then I got involved because I got myself so involved with the veterans myself,
awesome.
part of the Jewish war veterans.
Mhm.
And the more I got deep into it, I got too deep at times.
Well, that's part of what happens when we get passionate about
But
something.
you do, because you turn into, I joked about it, you turn into mush when someone calls you
Hmm.
last minute and you
Yeah.
have to do whatever it is. And what I did is a few months back, and I'd like you to join us if we could. And I'll put we started a website that's called we-r-vets.us. And what we did on there, we got the Northport involved, we got Stony Brook, we got the state involved. And what we did is we linked them all together, that if someone's looking, as a veteran, looking for help, to go there, instead of, let's say, going to Newground and not finding out that they could get help somewhere else. What we did is we tried to get everybody together. It's like new, we just started in May.
Awesome.
Hmm. Like a centralized, almost a centralized
Wonderful.
resource database for veterans.
Right, that's what we
Wonderful.
did, is because not that we built it for American Legion, Jewish war veterans, etc. I'll be honest, what we did is when we built this, I thought for a minute the Jewish war veterans would join us, but they said, we can't join. It's not all Jewish war veterans. But I said, we didn't make this for Jewish war veterans. We made it for all veterans.
Right.
That if you go there, they'll know that the Legion exists. They'll know the Jewish war veterans exist.
Right.
They'll
Right.
know the Catholics, etc. And UVO, we got them involved.
Mhm.
And try to everybody link together. And like it's like when we talk about this, people don't know about New Ground. They
That's
don't
right.
know about the at the park where we have our everything there, our monuments and everything. They don't even know it exists.
Right.
They don't even know we exist as veterans.
Right.
And it's the truth. And even the VA does not look out after you. That's the key. And that's what I see. And a lot of our guys go by the wayside. That's what got me involved. And what you were talking about is I got involved when I was 62 and now I'm 72. And it's hard to say no anymore
It is. Yeah.
because we all serve
Yeah.
and we serve part of our lives there. And then I found just
And
like
I know Bernie Rader has got his hand up actually, Gary, while you're talking. And Bernie is a longtime supporter of New Grounds. And ironically, Bernie and Gary are both a part of the same group. And Diane and I went to go speak to them, and Gary invited us. And then we walk in the door, and there's Bernie. And of course, we know him. So Bernie, I don't know if you were waving to say something, if you wanted to add something, or if you just want to unmute yourself. You're muted, Bernie. If you unmute yourself, we can hear you. Can you click a button to unmute yourself there? There you go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Gary is my commander of the Jewish war veterans. And he's one of the guys, is the best. He does everything he does. But I am right now a little older now.
a little bit.
Yeah, a little back. I'm, I guess, 97, I think.
Oh my, you don't look a day of it.
Yeah. So I was in the war. I was a prisoner. I was exchanged. So the only thing we want to help everybody. And I think what we should see, that's why I wanted to see you, Shannon. Thank you.
Bernie, it's so great that you joined us. And anybody who knows from our galas, Bernie Rader has been with us, and we always acknowledge the veterans in the room. And we've specifically acknowledged Bernie as a World War II veteran prisoner of war. And Bernie's done a tremendous amount of work speaking publicly, educating students and youth and different groups on World War II, on, Jewish war veterans, on the Holocaust, just you name it. Bernie, you're an inspiration as well. And thank you for your service, and thank you for your continued service to try and educate so many about what went on.
We made 350 programs in high schools and with churches and Jewish synagogues. We made 350 things that were there. So and Shannon, I thank you also. You were so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to thank you all again. And we're going to sign off. We hope you join us for our next program in a couple of months. And thank you for making this easy and a success. Máiréad, well done. Congratulations again, and happy anniversary. Everybody have a great day. Have a great weekend.